That's weird. Okay, welcome everybody. This is the training for the SUD team on how to use Power BI reports and how to create them as well. So there's going to be two parts to this training. The first is if someone else makes a report, how to view it. It's mostly self-explanatory, but not 100%. And then the second part is going to be how to make reports for you and other people to view. I'm just curious, who here today, is anybody here today thinking that they may actually be creating reports? Any yeses?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right, so that second part is going to be for you. And actually, we'll probably have a booster shot training on that after today. All right, so we're starting here, basic navigation. I'm going to switch over to actually live Power BI at this point and just be following the printout alongside. So if you guys could go online to your browser of choice, and in the URL, just type up powerbi.com. In the upper right is where you sign in. And you're going to sign in with your email address from work here and the password. It's all one thing. All your Microsoft accounts are from that same password and username. So there's like a lot of stuff in your face here. Ignore it. The most important part that you want to navigate to is on the bottom left here where it says workspaces. When you click on that, different people are going to see different things, but you should all see something that says PIHP here. This is where I'm going to keep analyses for the PIHP. So click on that. Now, what you see in here are reports and data sets. You can tell the difference because under type, it's labeled that way. So the reports are for the users of the data, and the data sets are for the makers of reports. And like I said, I'm going to cover how to use reports first, and then how to make data reports later in this training today. All right, so first let's look at the report. Click on the link right there, the name of the report, SUD outcomes. It'll take a second to load up, but for the most part, this is super zippy. Okay, let me just take a couple seconds to talk about what we're looking at here. The SUD, well, I guess me and the SUD team, we came up with measures, internal measures, to try to understand how people are doing in SUD treatment. So we have whether they improved or maintained their stage of change, they reduced frequency of use, improved or maintained their employment or school status, improved or maintained stable housing, improved or maintained no arrests in the last 30 days, improved or maintained abstinence, and improved or maintained attendance at self-help groups. And this is between admission and discharge. Up here, we look at the percent of discharges that did these things, improved or maintained XYZ. And then on the left, we're looking at the number of admissions that are included in this analysis and the number of distinct consumers, because a person can be readmitted again and again. So overall, this analysis contains 1,500 or so admissions, and that represents about 1,300 distinct people. All right, now let's talk about how Power BI can help you to look into these data. The nice thing about Power BI is it allows you to slice and dice the data to get to the heart of the matter, whatever it is you want to find out. One of the ways to do that is with filters. So I'm going to first talk about the different ways to filter the data. The first way to filter the data is with the filters pane. For some reason, it is hidden right now on mine, but you can open it up if it's hidden on yours. And there's going to be different filters that are active on the page or on the individual visualization. In this case, I'm looking here, filters on this page, the discharge fiscal year. If you click this down arrow, you can see how it's being filtered right now. The default way that this report is published is to show you just fiscal years 19, 20, and 21. If you wanted, you could look at all of it. But right now it's just looking at the last few years. So as an example to see how to play with this, let's uncheck 2019. So we're just looking at 20 and 21. You can see the graph moved slightly. The number of admissions and consumers changed. So that's how you can use the filter pane to filter. Whenever you want to undo the filters and get back to the published state of the report, up here is a reset button. So if you click that, it says, do you really want to go back? Yes, I do. And you get back to the published state, start from ground zero. The second and really super obvious way to filter the data are with these slicers. People are not always going to put slicers on analyses, but I really like them, so I stuck a bunch of them on this analysis. You can see in the published state already, I'm only looking at admissions where there were 30 or more days between admission and discharge. If you could undo that if you want, but I have it that way because I think it's more meaningful, just personally. I only have cases where the discharge reason was not that they died or dropped out or went to jail or terminated by the facility. That would mean they were violating rules and had to end abruptly early. Because this is based on TEDS admissions and discharges, I didn't include assessment referral forms because that doesn't even make sense. So just admissions. But you could change this however you want. Like, for example, suppose that you just want to look at the last, let's say you just want to look at quarter 2 and 1 of fiscal year 21. Whenever you want to select multiple, you hold the control key down and you click. So I'm going to just click 21 quarter 2, 21 quarter 1. So now I see I'm talking about 249 admissions, 235 people, and you can see how the graphs change. So you could use that if you wanted to say, always show the current quarter and like have an analysis ready to show quarterly. You would just pick the one you want. Another thing you can do here is, this is a hierarchy of county, provider, and site. So let's say I just wanted to see, I could open up Washtenaw. First of all, I could just do Washtenaw. Undo it by clicking it again. Or let's say I want to dig in a little deeper. I want to just see Washtenaw all of Dawn. Or let's say I just want to see Stony Creek. Like that. So let's hit reset. And you'll see it gets back to published state again. Any questions so far? Okie doke. The last thing I want to talk about for filtering is something that is not obvious, and it's but it's really useful. It's called cross filtering. If you click on any part of any visual, the rest of the page will filter for what you clicked. As an example, let's say I click anywhere here on the Salvation Army row. Now I can see Salvation Army all by themselves. And this is a little different than, what I had done a second ago where I just clicked on Stony Creek, for example, and remember it was just big giant bars. This shows you Salvation Army, but it also shows you in comparison to the rest of the population. I really like this feature. The one thing I'm not crazy about is it doesn't respond to the reset button. So if you ever click on something and you're like, how do I undo this? Click it again. It's an on-off button. It works the same if you click inside the graph. Like, let's say I just want to see the OOR means out of region. It's none of the 4 counties. If you just click on one of those, now this is telling me there are 51 there. And again, I click it second time to undo. Okay, so that's it for filtering. You can use the filters pane, you can use the slicers, or you could use cross filters. In the first 2 ways, you can reset by using the reset button. The cross filters don't respond to the reset button. It's an on-off situation. The next thing I want to talk about is the different viewing options. This is a huge topic, and I'm not going to go through every little granular detail of it. I'm going to just hit the ones that I think are probably useful to you. So if you hover over any of the visualizations, the viewing options show up in one of the corners. Sometimes it's the bottom. So hover over the table, hover over the graph, you see it. And then there's an ellipsis where you get more options as well. So I'm going to talk about just a few of these. The first one, it's so hard to unclick. Okay, the first one is copy. If you want to just take this picture and plop it into a PowerPoint or Excel, or I'm sorry, or Word, you can copy the visual as an image and then paste it. Another one, focus mode. That's right here. This is useful if this graph is too small to really see the fine details. If you click it, you can see a much bigger picture and really get into what's going on. To get back, you in the upper left-hand corner, you hit back to report. If you're not already looking at a table, another nice one is show as table. If I click that, then I don't have to guess what all these numbers are. It's going to show me what they are. And again, go back to report. I can't imagine why you'd want to do this for this, but there are going to be situations where you don't like the sort order. Maybe on a table would be more likely. In that case, you can actually choose how you want to sort the data. Sometimes there's a sort by if there's more than one choice. You can sort ascending and descending. And the last one I want to talk about here is called personalize this visual. This is very new in Power BI. I didn't even know it existed until Friday. And it is awesome. So if I click this, even though you're not technically a like quote maker of the report, you could change up the analysis on the fly. So I'm clicking this and it's all of a sudden telling me, oh, I don't have to do it as a clustered column chart. I can choose something else. I don't have to do it on this variable. I can choose something else. You can totally change it up. So it's probably not going to be hugely useful to change up this. I already went through all the different ways to display the data myself, and this seemed like the best, but maybe there is a better way. Let's look at, for example, instead of a clustered column chart, I'm clicking on the link by clustered column chart, I'm going to say a line chart. And now I get it my way, like Burger King. Are there any questions about this? Okay, let's hit reset. Let's say you got yourself into a corner you don't like. You can always reset to get back to default.
I think there was one question, Jessica.
Oh, sorry. I can only see my own screen. So
Alyssa's wondering if changing the personal view would change it for other individuals that the report is shared with.
I don't know. No, it should not.
I do not think so.
Yeah, I think if you were sharing a username, it might.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't think so. Interesting point, though. If you are sharing a username with other people, you do want to hit that reset right out of the gates when you open a report, because somebody might have it on some filtered to some way and you think you're looking at it one way and you're not. So it's always just a nice practice to hit reset before you start looking at the data.
Just to clarify with this group, there are, because we're sharing this tool throughout the region, our regional partners have one login and are sharing the tool.
Right. Lenaway will all have one login, for example.
So for everyone here on the PIHP, you'll all have your own individualized login. You wouldn't be sharing that information.
Thank you, Michelle. Right. Any other questions?
One other one in the chat. Can two people look at the report and change it at the same time?
Yeah, yes, you're all looking at your own version if you've got, yes. Mm-hmm. But I will, like, if I'm making changes to my view of it on powerbi.com, you guys aren't going to see that. This is just me playing with my own graph.
Yeah. So once you get in here, it's kind of like you're doing your analysis and your work, it separates it out
Yep.
from the shared pieces of it.
Yep. This is your own personal page for it, which I'm going to talk about in a second. There's another nice new feature that is going to be, I hope, really helpful for us. And it's exactly down that vein. But I'll get to it in a second. First, I want to just quickly, unless there are more questions about what we just did, I want to finish up about more viewing options.
Nothing else has come through.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there are other viewing options that on some reports you'll see. If you hover over, some visualizations you'll see. If you hover over the table, the viewing options this time are on the bottom, and you'll see there's additional ones, these arrows up and down. That means there are drill down and drill up options for this one. So in this case, you can't see it. You wouldn't know this, but I'm telling you, the hierarchy for this graph is county, and then provider, and then site. So when you're drilling up, you're going from site to provider to county. And when you're drilling down, you're going county to provider to site. So let's hit the up arrow to drill up. And now we're going to see it by county. And from here, there are a number of ways you could drill down. And I want to show the difference between those. So, oh, good grief, it's down there. So the first one is the forked arrow. If I hit the forked arrow, then that means I'm going to go to the next level in addition to the level I'm seeing. So if I hit that, I'm seeing the next level, provider, within county. What would it have looked like if I had done just the double arrow? It would have been provider instead of, not in addition to, county. And then the single down arrow makes it so the next thing you touch will be the item you drill into. So if I hit the single down arrow, and let's say the next thing I click is Lenawee, it will only drill into Lenawee and show me that result all by itself. And you click up to get there again. Are there any questions about that, you guys? Okay. So those were the viewing options that appear when you hover over. And I hit reset. The last little viewing option I want to talk about before I talk about bookmarks is it's not always going to be part of a report, but on this report, I made buttons. And really, as far as I can tell, this is when Power BI is not doing the thing I want it to do, so I have to hack it. So in this case, I'm making it so you can see the data in different ways by clicking a button. Right now, you're looking at this analysis by county. If I click by county, nothing happens. If you click by provider, it's showing you the exact same graph, but the legend is now individual providers. And get back to by county by clicking the button. And then the last thing is, this is just a completely different way to look at the data if the other two aren't doing it for you. This is showing you there's one graph per outcome. And in this case, you see these up here, that means there must be some drill down, drill up options. In this case, the next level down is county. The next level down is site. Okay, so right now you're looking at year. Does anybody want to be brave and guess what happens if I click the forked arrow at this point? This is a quiz. What will you see? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is you'll see the next level in addition to the level you were just looking at. The forked arrow always shows you the one you're looking at and the next one. So now you get to see county times year, which might be useful. So I'm going to reset, get me back to square one. Okay. This next thing is so super cool, and this is what I was saying. It's along the same vein of what you're talking about. Is my view the same as the other person's view? What is going on? Not only is your view yours alone, but you can actually save ways of looking at the data in bookmarks. So let's say you got this all clicked up to how you really like seeing it, and you don't want to have to redo all those clicks every time you sit down. So let's say I only want to see the grid layout. I only want to see Lenaway, and I only want to see fiscal years 18, 19, 20, and 21. And that's how I always want, well, not always, but I'm going to want to see this configuration many times. So what you do is you click it all up into the shape you want. Then up here on the right next to the reset button is bookmarks. You hit add a personal bookmark, give it a name that's meaningful to you. If for some reason, like you'll never ever want to see any other view, really, you could make this the default view so that reset would bring you there. And whether or not you click that, you do hit save. And now when you open this, let's say I'm opening it right now. First thing in the morning, it's reset. I need to see the Lenaway grid. Now you can go show more book. Oh, oops. Lenaway grid over time. It instantly brings you to the page configured how you want it. And if for whatever reason this changes, like, oh no, I really didn't want to see the others, you can also edit the way that bookmark works. You can update it, rename it, and so on. Any questions about that? Okay. In Excel, there are usually lots of sheets, and you can know what sheet you're on and navigate sheets by looking at the bottom left. In Power BI, it's this pane, the Pages pane. So what we're looking at right now is just one of 3 pages in this analysis. The second page is the federal version of these indicators, just so that we know what the feds can see. And this is clicked up and filtered in such a way that we should be seeing what the state sees and what the feds see. None of these, we don't get these outs here. And then if you really want to look into a certain configuration of the data, like who is in this data set, if you hit details, you can click it up how you want and see the individuals who are included in that data set, case number, everything. One thing I want to point out, by choice, I made it so that, let's say you click fiscal year 21, quarter 2, Livingston. On this page, when you navigate to the next page, those are going to sync. The only ones that will sync are the discharge fiscal year quarter and the county provider site. And I did that because I don't want people to make the mistake of doing the clicks on this first one and then think they're looking at the same thing when they go to the next page. But this is a choice. None of the other things will sync. If you guys don't like it that way, let me know and I can change it. Okay, the very last topic for Power BI users is, let's say you need to share these data with somebody who does not have Power BI. You just need a flat file. I think the best way to do that is to go up here to export. This is along the top. And you can do a PDF. I'm not crazy about it. You can analyze in Excel, which is more for the makers, and I'll be covering that next. But I really like the PowerPoint because you can export what you see here and then edit. Excuse me, you can edit it. It does take like a minute. So this is how you would do it. You click through and you say export, like, yeah, I have it configured the way I want. Current values, yes. If you do that, I actually did it ahead of time so we don't have to sit here and wait and watch me do it. This is what it looks like. It puts it really cool in a PowerPoint. And like, let's say you don't want to see all of this stuff. You could be formatting it a bit. But right away, it's a pretty decent PowerPoint. Okay, so that is it for Power BI users. The next thing we're going to talk about is Power BI makers, how to make analyses using Power BI. If you want to stick around, you are, of course, so welcome, but you don't need to. It's up to you.
And I didn't see any other questions come through the chat, but I think we'll pause for a second too, if that's okay, Jess. If anyone has any other questions or comments related to what we just saw.
Good point. Yes. Okay.
Jessica, I have one question.
Yes.
So say that folks, are thinking about an analysis that they have to do and have kind of looked through some of the reports that we have in Cricut or have looked through some of the data that's available to them here, but they're just not able to see what they really need. How would they, how could they possibly approach getting that data and seeing if it's available for Power BI?
Well, I'm always available. If you just ask me, I will answer. So you could say, what I really need to do is I'm trying to figure out how to know if this provider they seem to be doing this thing and I can't tell. Just talk it out with me and I will either tell you that there's a way to do it with what you've got now, or I will make it happen.
And I think too, because this is a newer tool, like Jess said, she found a new feature that they added just on Friday. We're continuing to learn more and more about Power BI. So if there's a data set that you use and that you do need to do some analysis with, you need to figure out how to drill down some of the data, talk to us, talk to Jessica, and we can see what the potentials are to get that into Power BI. I don't know if it will always be feasible, but it's better for us to put our heads together and figure it out and see if we can come up with a good tool for you, rather than not trying to check it out. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I work with this data all the time. I'd love a better way to be able to look at it. And we can see what the capabilities are. Exactly, Jane. And that was one of the data sets we were talking about is the prevention data.
Yeah, I agree 100% with all what Michelle said. And Jane, I completely picture you using this. And then I had said, and Michelle said, yeah, do ask us and we may see if I might make it happen or you may have it in your hands. Or the third option would be you can make your own Power BI reports, which is the next section. So let's move on to that. If you go back, navigate back to the PIHP workspace. And like I said, the reports are for the users. The data sets are for the makers. I'm going to show you a few different ways you can configure the data and get it into your own hands. If you don't see what you want, you might be able to do it without having to talk to anybody. Again, no problem. Talk to people, but you might not have to. If you hover here, first of all, I want you to see that the refresh date right here, it says this morning at 8:18. The data are set to refresh every day at 8 a.m. from the database from Cricut. So every time the data set refreshes, any report you make from this data set will also refresh, just like Cricut reports. So you can make something and it will not stay static if that's how you want. All right, so on the ellipsis, let's first talk about how to make a Power BI report. So click More Options, and then the second item there is Create Report. So what we're seeing here is first, this is the canvas where you put your visualizations. Here's the filter pane. And together, this white part is what the users will see. Then in gray is sort of your developer panes. The visualizations pane, this is where you get to choose what to stick on the canvas. And the fields, these are the tables and fields that you would put in your visualizations. This topic is enormous, and I'm still learning myself. I'm very much a beginner. So I'm not really in a great place to be teaching people how to do this to any great extent, but let me just tell you, almost all visualizations work this way. You choose a visualization, and then you drag fields into that visualization. Let me show you an example. The most simple kind of visualization that you see all the time is a clustered column chart. So in the visualizations pane, if you could navigate to the box that says clustered column chart, click it once. As soon as you do, a blank clustered column chart appears in the canvas. So then the next thing is we would drag fields here to populate it with data. The fields are over here. Let me just say there are two tables, and in each table, like, you know, when you're looking at an Excel spreadsheet and then there's like columns of data, those columns are called fields. So the different columns, the different fields available are underneath it. And in this analysis, I chose to make even like little suitcases that contain the different fields just to organize it, because there's so many variables associated with SUD data. So right now, this table is, we're just looking at all the SUD admission to discharge pairs. Inside this little suitcase, admission to discharge basic info, it'll tell you like the fiscal year and quarter, when it happened, the referral disposition. In this one, everything that has to do with ASAM, and so on. I do want to say one little quick thing. There are fields, just normal fields, and then there are extra special fields called measures. So if you guys are used to using Excel pivot tables, you would know that you can just like grab whatever fields and throw it into a pivot table, and you can be a little bit reckless, and it will behave for you. Power BI is just a little bit more fussy. You need to kind of know ahead of time what you're going to be measuring, and the maker, the person who configures this data set, will have to turn those things into measures. So in this table, some of the things that I knew ahead of time there we go. I knew ahead of time we'd want to be counting up number of admissions and number of consumers. You saw those in the table. If you hover over it, if I've done my due diligence, you should see a description of what it is. So I knew ahead of time we'd be wanting these, so I created them as measures. So anyway, we've got all the different fields we can choose to throw into that visual. Let us look at a cluster column chart of the number of admissions for some other variable. So to do that, open up the measures little suitcase file folder thing and click on number of admissions and drag it to the box that says values. And we get something that's supremely unhelpful, just one big giant bar that shows there's a lot. You can, by the way, click and drag the visualization to size it differently. So this is not useful right now, but what we can do is start grabbing other fields and seeing how this changes. So in this example, I'm going to the suitcase that says provider. It says all the information about the provider on the admission discharge pair. So let's say admission provider. If you bring that to the axis, now you see it by provider. This is site. You could uncheck it to make it go away. You could do, I have it, it's called the short name. If you pull that over to axis, now you see it like that. And you could do all sorts of other stuff. Like, let's say you wanted it short name and site. You could take the site, put it over here in the legend. Oh, that's unuseful. But you can basically just start dragging stuff around and seeing. It's like when you take a picture with a camera, you just point your camera here, there, and everywhere. And when you see something that's like, oh yeah, that speaks to me, you click. It's basically the same thing. You drag stuff around until you like what you see and it's telling you a story. When you get this clicked up how you want it, you go up here to save. Save this report. You give it a name. Let's say my own report. Click save. And now when you go back to the PIHP workspace, it's there. It didn't replace the one that was already there. It's in addition to the one that's already there. And again, every time this data set is refreshed, your own report will be refreshed as well. I'm going to, at the end of this presentation, give you a link for more information on how to do visualizations. It's the tutorial I followed to be able to understand what I understand. But it's really too big of a topic for here. But that said, are there any questions about the things I just showed you? Okay.
So Jess,
Yeah.
if someone makes a report here, will everybody else see that report when they go to the PIHP workspace?
I don't know. Can you
Okay.
guys see this?
Yes, but well, let me go.
Did you all save it with that same name? I'm going to change the name.
I didn't save one and it is on mine.
Okay, so probably a better name than my own report is in order. Thanks, Joellen. That is a really good point. I need to look into this, but I believe that you can change settings and see who's allowed to see it. Nope, I need to look into this. I don't want to waste time on it right now. I might be here under Access. But yeah, it looks like it's viewable to the PIHP. Excellent question. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is how to actually futz around with this data using pivot tables in Excel. For some of you, that's going to be your native language, and it'll be much easier than doing it in Power BI. Much more comfortable. So let's talk about that. To do that, again, hover over the data set, hit the ellipsis, and then go to Analyze in Excel, which is the first option. And this is the exercise I asked you to go through last week to make sure there weren't any hiccups. So hitting save. Depending on how big the data set is, it might take a little bit, but then you just open it up. You click in. Oh, I should say some of you might have your settings such that you don't know where this is being saved. It is being saved somewhere, but you don't want to lose it. So hit enable editing and enable content. And then if you don't know where this is saved, I happen to know it's on the desktop, but if you don't know, you might want to save it someplace that you can find again. Okay. So if you've used pivot tables before, this should look super familiar to you. We've got the canvas over here, and we've got the pivot table fields and little boxes over here. If you have not used pivot tables before, today is not your day. But I'm going to talk about this a little later. The PIHP is going to be hosting a Excel training in May to talk about how to do pivot tables. So that will be your day if you want to learn more. Okay, so it looks a little different than what you're used to seeing in Excel. I'm going to just collapse these real quick. So what it does is it separates out the measures from your data sets from the rest of the fields. I think that when you're creating a report in Power BI, you can get a little fast and loose with whether you're actually throwing, quote, measures in your visualizations. But when you go to Excel, this is for sure. You have to know what you are analyzing ahead of time and have them as measures. So let's just look at SUD admissions. This is the admission pairs. Remember, we were just a second ago looking at number of admissions and number of consumers. Those are the measures available to you for this table. And all the other fields that we saw are here, just like we were looking at. So again, huge topic, not going to be covered in great detail today, but let's just go through a simple exercise. If you click on number of admissions and drag it down to the values box, more or less the exact same thing I said for Power BI. You're taking a measure and dragging it to the values box. Again, it shows you a single, very unhelpful number. But like Power BI, you can start adding other things to make this more useful to you. So let's do the exact same thing we did before. Let's go through all the other fields. Let's find the provider folder. We could take it by the short name. You could put that in the rows if you want to see it by row. You can put it by columns if you want to see it by column. Put it by row. And you guys, this is like 21,000. That's a lot. Do you know why there's so many? Because this is like all the data, not just 2019, 2021. This is since fiscal year 15, all of them. So probably what you're going to want to do is also narrow it down by when it happened. So let's look at basic info, and I'm going to just say the discharge fiscal year and quarter. Let's put that along the columns.
Jess, while you're doing that, Erica had wondered if you can save the report in Excel, but not in the Power BI workspace.
Yes. Yep. As soon as it's in Excel, this is now your own personal file. You save it on your desktop or wherever you save things in. The only thing is it's not going to update daily like a Power BI report would, but it gives you your snapshot and you can mess around with it and in your own private desktop. Here's another thing about Excel that's different from the Power BI reports. I have not found out how to do this in Power BI reports. I wish I could, because this feature is, I think, awesome. And for this, I'm actually going to use the PDF version because I don't want to flash any Medicaid IDs on the screen. But however you have your data configured right now, double click on one of these cells. Like in mine, I had Parkside in fiscal year 20. I double clicked it. When you do that, instantly a new sheet will open up showing you, like in this case, there were 19 admissions that I double clicked on. It'll list out those 19 admissions. It'll only do the first 1,000, but we were only looking at 19. And it'll show you everything about those admissions, including their Medicaid ID, which is why I'm not flashing it on the screen. So there's probably more to talk about for makers, and like one of those would be how to use the desktop version of Power BI. And if you're going to be importing your own data, like Jane, I think you are, you're going to probably have Excel sheets, I'm guessing, and you're going to want to suck it up into Power BI and make analyses with it. Right now, there's no way to do that on PowerBI.com. You'll see this if you go to create. It's saying, looking for Excel, we're adding it soon. Till then, paste or manually enter your data or use the desktop. So that's a training we could do at another time, how to use the desktop version to suck up data and make your own analyses. But other than that, that is what I planned to cover today. If you want more resources on how to do these things, first of all, if you're going to be a maker, then you do need to be a little bit more familiar with how the data looks and is put together behind the scenes. It's not enough just to know how the visualizations work. This is the tutorial I took to understand what I understand. Highly recommend it. And then after that, if you want to know more about how to do visualizations, this is a link. You would take this tutorial. These are really great. They have, if you click in, they have labs, virtual labs, where you click into this and it's telling you, like, click this, see what it does, click that, see what it does. Excellent. Highly recommend it. And then the other thing that I talked about a second ago, I want to plug the Excel training that the PIHP is going to be hosting on May 21st. It should be on, I sent out an invitation for this ages ago, but I can resend it if you don't see it. May 21st at 3 p.m. It's going to be just a little bit about Excel, how to sort, filter, and make pivot charts and pivot tables. Are there any questions at this point? Okie doke. I'm gonna stop recording.